You ever get that feeling that a choice was kind of made for you, even when you had, plenty of options? Well, it turns out our decisions are often being shaped by a hidden force, a deliberately bad choice that's put there just to make you pick something else. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful tricks in behavioral psychology.
Okay, so let's just dive right into this with a classic real-world scenario that at first glance makes absolutely no sense. Let's say you're out shopping for a new microwave. So you're faced with two choices. You've got an Emerson for $110 and a Panasonic for $180. It's a tough call, right? A classic trade-off. Do you save some money, or do you go for what you think is probably the higher quality brand? Now, in studies, when people get this choice, about 43% of them end up going with the more expensive Panasonic. But here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when a third option is thrown into the mix? Another Panasonic, but this one's priced even higher at $200. All of a sudden, that original $180 Panasonic doesn't seem so pricey anymore, does it? Actually, compared to the $200 one, it looks like a fantastic deal. And the numbers totally back this up. The percentage of people choosing that original 180 Panasonic, it skyrockets to 60%. Now think about that for a second. Nothing about the first two microwaves changed at all. The only thing that happened was a third, clearly worse option was introduced, an option that almost nobody would actually buy. So this brings us to the big mystery here. Why on earth does adding a choice that nobody really wants make us change our minds so dramatically and so predictably? The answer? Well, it reveals a fundamental secret about how our brains really tick. Right, so this little phenomenon we just saw has a pretty fancy name, the Asymmetric Dominance Effect. But thankfully, most people just call it by its much simpler, much cooler name, the Decoy Effect. And it's one of the most well-documented cognitive biases out there. Now, what's so crucial here is that this effect just completely shatters the rules of rational decision-making. I mean, classical economics assumes that if you prefer option A over option B, adding some random new option C shouldn't change that at all. But the decoy effect proves that's just not how we work. Our choices are deeply, deeply influenced by the context they're presented in. To really get how this works, let's meet the three players on the stage of your decision. First, you have the target. That's our $180 Panasonic, the one the seller really wants you to buy. Then there's the competitor, the $110 Emerson. And finally, the star of our show, the decoy, that $200 Panasonic whose only job, its entire purpose, is to make the target look amazing. So how does this simple little trick work so darn well? Let's get into the psychology of it. It all really comes down to our brain's desire to avoid doing the hard work of making a difficult trade-off. And this just illustrates the mental shortcut our brain takes so perfectly. See, without the decoy, you're stuck in this painful back and forth, price versus quality. It's stressful. You're afraid of making the wrong call. But with the decoy, the choice becomes dead simple. You're not really comparing the target to the competitor anymore. Instead, your brain finds the easy comparison. Hey, the 180 Panasonic is obviously a better deal than the $200 one. The decoy gives you a quick, easy reason to feel confident in your choice. So there are a few key things happening under the hood here. First is what psychologists call reason-based choice. The decoy just gives us a simple story we can tell ourselves about why our choice is the right one. Second is trade-off aversion. Our brains just hate the anxiety of tough choices, and the decoy helps us completely bypass that bad feeling. And finally, and this is so cool, there's the attentional spotlight. Eye-tracking studies literally show that when a decoy is there, our eyes physically lock onto comparing the target and the decoy, back and forth, pretty much ignoring the competitor. Okay, so now that you know the theory, I promise, you are going to start seeing this powerful tool absolutely everywhere. It's used to shape decisions both really small and, well, really big. Oh yeah, you have definitely seen this. Think about any subscription service. They'll often have a basic plan, a premium plan, and then some middle option that's priced just awkwardly enough to make that premium plan look like an absolute steal. That middle option? That's a classic decoy. It's not designed to be sold, it's designed to sell the option right next to it. But this isn't just about getting you to spend more money. It can actually be used for good. In one study on colorectal cancer screening, researchers found that adding a less convenient decoy option actually increased participation in the main screening program in a huge way. It jumped from around 39% all the way up to almost 55%. The decoy just made the decision to get screened feel easier and more obviously correct. And believe it or not, this effect even shows up in politics. Studies looking at the 2000 US presidential election found that a third-party candidate can act like an unintentional decoy. By presenting a more extreme version of certain policies, they can make a major party candidate with similar but more moderate positions seem way more appealing. In one simulation, just the presence of a decoy candidate swung voter preference by a staggering 12 points.
But this isn't some magic mind control trick that works every single time. Its power is actually really sensitive to the context and, of course, to the person who's making the choice.
So what this tells us is that the decoy effect really thrives on our uncertainty. It's at its most powerful when we're novices in a subject, when we don't have strong opinions already. It also works best when the options are described with simple numbers, like price or screen size, things that are just super easy to compare. And finally, it's most effective when the original two options are really, really close to begin with, making the choice feel hard. Now, on the flip side, the effect can sometimes just disappear completely. Experts in a field, for example, they tend to just ignore the decoy because they're relying on their own internal knowledge to judge value. It also fails with what you'd call experiential choices. You can't really decoy someone into picking a soda by listing its ingredients. They have to taste it. And interestingly, if you try to stick a decoy in an AI recommendation, it can actually backfire because it makes the user lose trust in the algorithm. In fact, if an option is already super popular, adding a decoy can actually make it less appealing. It's a wild phenomenon called the repulsion effect. A major meta-analysis found a really precise tipping point. If an option is already chosen by about 74% of people, adding a decoy to try and help it will actually push people away from it. So what does all this really mean? When you boil it all down, the decoy effect exposes a fundamental truth about our minds. Our sense of value isn't fixed. We don't have some internal calculator that tells us exactly what something is worth. Instead, we build our preferences right there in the moment, based entirely on the comparisons that are put right in front of us. And that leaves us with a final thought. Now that you know the secret of the decoy, you've got this new lens to see the world through. So from the coffee you buy, to the news you read, to the candidates you consider voting for, what choices are you going to see differently tomorrow?